Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to The Voice of the Customer. I'm delighted to be joined by Jenny Lynch from Evergreen Campaigns, who has had a fantastic career with Robert Half, and she'll share that with us in just a second. My name is Vincent Seddon. I'm Customer Success Director at Simplicity, and today we want to bring to you the voice of the customer, how feedback fuels smarter recruitment strategies, and some of the key things that you need to think about when building out your own customer and client strategy. So Jenny, I know we want to jump straight into today, but I think it's good to set the scene. It'd be great to hear a little bit more about you, your experience, and why are we spending the next 45 minutes together talking everything around the voice of the customer?
Yeah, well, good to see everyone or meet everyone. And thanks for the intro. I have been in the world of marketing for 30 years, and 20 of them have been within the recruitment industry. So yeah, I've worked for Robert Half, I've worked for small exec search businesses, I've worked for international local businesses. And I think the reason why we're talking is that I've learned that over that time, if you are not thinking about the customer at every turn, you're probably not going to grow your business as fast as someone else who is. And that's because if you think about it, clients and candidates, they are in the driving seat when it comes to the recruitment relationship. They choose who they want to work with. They choose if they like you, and if they don't like you, they can be quite vocal about it. And you know, we're online review channels and things like that. And they are genuinely not always that loyal. So they can easily flip to the competition if they feel like they're not getting the service that they warrant and should expect. So I think that genuinely understanding what turns your customer on and off is really, really critical. And that was why when we were speaking, Vincent, I think a few weeks back about what you were doing in Simplicity with your kind of customer feedback program and the impact it actually made to the business, we hatched the plan for the webinar, and we thought this would be a really good team because genuinely we feel it will make a really big impact, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And naturally, out of that conversation, we're here today to talk about some of the key actions. So just to set the scene of how we're going to run today, first of all, thank you very much for that intro, Jenny. I think you've definitely put some credibility around the next 45 minutes of why recruitment agencies need to take note, and hopefully some of the key actions that they're going to take from today. We've got a set of questions that we're going to run through that we've kind of pulled together, which are more of FAQs that we hear some of our peers asking in the network. However, we do have the opportunity, as this is the live webinar, to take questions as we go. So you've got the question facility within the comments option. If you've got anything that you'd like to ask myself or Jenny throughout today's webinar, then please do put them in the comments box. We'll do our very best to bring some of those questions live to stage. So we're going to run through some hints and tips, hopefully to help you avoid some of the pitfalls. And then we'll finish off today with some key actions that we feel you should take as recruitment business owners to get yourself set up and think about some of the key strategy and actions that you might need to put into place. Pam, yes, the webinar is being recorded, just to answer your questions straight away. Thank you very much. And it's great to see you, Pam. I know you're one of our biggest supporters, so thank you so much for joining us today. So, Jenny, I'm going to come to you first with the question of why is feedback so critical? I know we're both going to add a little bit of our own thoughts around this, but from a marketing perspective and from someone who is looking at marketing strategies and delving into the customer feedback story, why is it so critical that we look at that at the moment in the industry?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think if you take a bit of a step back about what recruitment is and how hard it can be to work in recruitment sometimes. So recruitment is a service business, right? It's delivered by people, which makes it immediately way more complex than marketing and promoting and doing BD for a product. And so to put that into context, if you and I, Vincent, bought a laptop as a product, you kind of know what you're going to get, what experience is, like what the delivery is, because it's totally standardized. It's really predictable and you can manage the experience quite nicely. But recruitment does not work like that because it's run by people. It's messy, it's human, it's live because it changes all the time because of various dynamics. And so that means that you can't really standardize it, and therefore it's quite complex. So we are in an environment where we're kind of shaped by things that we don't necessarily control. So think about it for recruiters. You've got a consultant taking a job order brief. How is he that day? How good was he with that experience? You've got a candidate going out on interview. How well prepared were they for the interview? And then you've got a hiring manager who may have had an argument with the boss an hour before the meeting. And so that all creates like a bit of a catalyst of what is the experience like. So for one client, it could be an amazing experience. And for the other client, it might be really bad. And it depends on the context. And so I think that's why feedback, particularly in service industries, is really, really invaluable, because you can actually get under the skin a little bit more about what's going on and look at, is there any hidden things that you're not aware of that you haven't seen firsthand? Are your recruiters saying we're delivering a great service and the client's really happy, but ultimately they're not? And you start to think about patterns and things that are happening in the business that perhaps you can take action on, because if you can see it, you can then think about what might be the solution for it. And I think that's really important with feedback, is we don't ask for feedback to go and sit in a little ivory tower somewhere. We do it because we want to take action. We want to deliver a better experience, a better service. And it helps you, I guess, potentially move your clients and candidates from being okay with your service to loyal ambassadors that will then promote you. And if you think about it, like we all want a testimonial, we all want a case study, because we'll use that in selling the business later on. And then if you are asking questions around how satisfied you are, it gives you some stats that you can use over time and again promote the business. So I think it's just really getting under the skin of the experience and then using it to elevate that service delivery and elevate the loyalty of your customers. What about you? What's your I guess, critical thing when it comes to feedback, because you've got the program running right now?
Absolutely. But first of all, I think everything that you've just said there is so critical. And I always use the saying, you cannot sell a box of service. So in order to be able to create that feeling, you've got to be able to provide service. And the only way that you can do that is by gaining feedback. Each customer requires different levels of service. So that links directly into some of the work that we're doing. And I know, Jenny, you've been part of our journey for the last few months, which has been great. So at Simplicity, we have focused heavily on service because we are a service provider. We don't provide a box of something. It's very much ensuring that we provide excellent service to our customers. And one of the key questions that we asked ourselves as a business about 3 or 4 years ago now was, how do we know what we're doing is working? And is it something that our customers are getting benefit from? And the only stat that we had was our retention figure. And I'll be completely honest, about 4 years ago, retention wasn't great. Customers were choosing to move on and use other providers. So that spurred us to ask lots of questions. So we went out to our customers to request feedback, and feedback is a gift, every type of feedback. What I would say is, if you are going out to ask for feedback, be prepared for the good, the bad, and the ugly, because you don't always get excellent feedback. And actually, you want that feedback that's constructive. You want your customer to say, on the whole, we're pretty happy because we're still with you. We're still paying our bill at the end of the month. However, it would be great if you did X, Y, and Z. So for me, it's absolutely crucial to get customer feedback to be able to retain customers. We all know how difficult it is to go and win new business. So at the moment, especially as challenging as the industry is at present, we should be valuing every customer relationship individually and ensuring that we're giving them the service that they want and expect, which will then in turn help and support from a retention perspective. And I've got some stats that I'm very proud of, I have to say, over the last 4 years that we've created at Simplicity, which I'll share with you later on in the webinar, which proves that this works. So that was a long-winded answer.
It's very true. And it's interesting because people remember the bad stuff more than the good. Like if you ask everyone to remember the experience they had, they'll run out all of the bad things that went on. And it's very rare that you get the good stuff. So as a people, we tend to focus in on the negative. So you have to be ready for it, but you also have to be ready to take action from it as well.
Do you know what? That's the most important thing. So it's crucial to get the feedback, but actually, I think it's more important to take clear action and show the customer that you've listened. Because if you ask for feedback and your customer gives you feedback and then you do nothing, ultimately that's customer service suicide, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So,
and so,
Jenny,
do you think?
Go on.
I was going to say, do you think there's any risks if you assume you know what clients think already?
Yeah, I do. We all know what assuming does, but if you think you know what your customer wants, first of all, you could invest far too much time and effort in creating a service that's not quite what they want or need. And secondly, the amount of commercial wastage that would create in the business is vast. On top of that, you may actually drive customers away from your business by not quite getting it right. So I think assuming that you know what your customer wants is just as bad as not asking for customer feedback and acting on it. Because what we have to remember is you cannot be the buyer and the seller. So if you are being the seller, i.e. the service provider, you've got to understand the buyer's requirements. And until you know that, it's very difficult to be market leading.
Yeah, I read a really interesting stat the other day, which was 1 out of 29 dissatisfied customers will tell you about it. The rest of them just walk away. So you almost need to encourage that feedback loop, because you will have someone that's not happy about something and they're not going to shout about it. They're just going to be silently moving away from your revenue income. So I think that's also important, to just not be blindsided by stuff that you think you know. Be open to just finding out how can things improve, because there's a lot of complexity around the service, around recruitment. It could be your communication, it could be your processes, it could be your finance systems. It may never be Simplicity's finance systems, but it could be a whole range of things. And actually, you don't want to miss the opportunity to retain them, but also to get them to kind of buy more from you, because you'd be surprised how many people will be upsold to. They can buy more, temp, different parts of the business. So it's always important to kind of keep that relationship really sticky.
Yeah, and I think linking into that, feedback creates opportunity, doesn't it? And it might be opportunity for change, but it might also be opportunity for growth. So, definitely take that on board. And I guess really that links back to your question about the risks. If you're not doing any of that, you are risking the opportunity of making positive change and growing not only you as a business, but also your customers as well. Okay, so we've spoken quite a lot about why it's so important to get feedback and some of the risks about assuming. So, Jenny, I know you're a real expert in getting customer feedback, but not only getting feedback, but also advising other businesses of best ways and best practice. So I think some of our viewers would really help from some guidance from yourself as to where do they start, how do they get the feedback, and what's some of the best actions that you can give.
Yeah, okay. So I could consider putting your feedback mind into sort of 2 moments. So I think about transactional feedback moments and relationship feedback moments. So transactional are really when you are in the moment receiving a service. So a really good example of this would be you've just placed a candidate. So you've got an opportunity in the moment where they remember everything really clearly, they're emotionally kind of tied to you, to capture what went well, what could have been improved. Many people start with kind of client surveys, first of all, when it's a job short market, but equally, if you can get those candidate experiences as well, don't forget, those candidates are your future hiring managers. Like, they are the potential pipeline for you in the future. So I think with transactional surveys, I'd recommend doing it very quickly after the moment. think of them as like a temperature check almost. Did the process run smoothly? Did you have the right communications running to the hiring manager, to the candidate that was coming along? How did the client feel about the shortlists and the candidates that you provided? Clearly it went well because there was a placement off the back of it, but really what was the overall service and speed like? And I think it's really important for you to try and put in a measurement tool in that survey so that you've got like almost a benchmark data for you that you can turn back to afterwards. So I think with a transactional survey, I like a CSAT, which is a customer satisfaction score. And that basically says something along the lines of how satisfied were you with our experience? And you put a scale of say 1 to 7 or 1 to 10. And it means that when you add that at the end of the survey, you're capturing in that moment, 70% of our clients are happy with our service. And then you can start to track that over a period of time. Has that carried on going up and up and up? Is it going down? Is it going down for certain parts of the business? Like, is there a difference between temp or perm parts of the business? And you usually find that the temp scores will be a little bit lower because there's more complexity around that arrangement. You've got things like timesheets, paying people, lots of churn. So you will often have slightly lower scores there to keep an eye on processes. So I think that's how I would do it. It's kind of do it on that initial successful placement on a transactional survey. And once you've got that up and running, Vincent, I would put in maybe your not so successful touch points. So if you think about all of those candidates that went out on interview, and they were obviously good candidates because you put them into the shortlist. They're obviously people that you want to keep on your bench for future roles. They would like to know, was that a really good experience? Because ultimately you want to be working with them again. So how did that work? Even if they weren't successful in the job, did we help them be the best that they could be? Did we give them good communication feedback? Did they know why they weren't successful? And you can get that feedback. And equally, if you think about it, you've got the mirror of that with the clients. So you've got clients that you've had jobs on with. We don't always fill 100% of our roles as much as we aim to. So how do you get the feedback on the not so successful placements that you've had? So that's the transactional piece. Does that make sense, Vincent? Can I expand any more on that?
Yeah. I do have a couple of questions, just to delve a little bit deeper. So you mentioned with the CSAT and the transactional side of things about a bit of a grading, maybe 1 to 7, 1 to 10. So I think quite often people use on a scale of 1 to 10. But how do you? So okay, you get your feedback in. How do you how do you dissect that? What does good look like? And equally, when should you know to take action? At what point? What score?
Yeah.
How does that work?
So I think the thing with this is you don't take it just on that one question. That question is helpful to an extent, but actually it doesn't tell you the why. Like, why am I good? Why am I not good? So the questions that you have around that in that transactional survey, around what you consider to be the reasons why someone thinks it's a good service or a not good service, they are also ranked. So for example, if you put in there, how responsive were we in our communication with you? And you saw that was a 2, and then you saw how good we were matching candidates for you, and that was a 9. You start to see the things, the pillars almost, that are influencing why you have delivered a good service. And I think there are probably about 5 maybe core areas that influence, a good satisfaction score. There's probably speed, because let's face it, people want to move really fast. So how responsive, how quick you are at hitting that goal of hiring is important. I think choice of the right kind of candidates to present for that role is really important. I think how well you are matching client and candidate together is really critical. I think communication is massive. Like, we are flooded with information in various different ways. How efficient, how relevant is it for them? And I think the last one that people forget is how easy is it to do business with you? If you're making it really complicated, lots of back and forth, really bad processes, you're going to get pushed down. So think about those kind of pillars almost of what you think is important that influences the service levels in your business. You might have other things in there. So temp payroll could be in there as well. And that is the nuts and bolts underneath what creates that really great CSAT core. So that's that piece. And then what you do about it is, if you've got enough data, you can start to see, is there any patterns in it? So are there particular parts of the business that are doing exceptionally well, and why is that? Are there other parts that are not doing so well? And how can we look at those with the business and be really transparent internally with our people to talk through why that's happening? Like, you might have a superstar performer, and you might have someone that's just learning their trade, and you might need to work with them to improve that service experience. And this data kind of helps you to do that as well.
Yeah, I
Does that
suppose
answer the
that
question?
also gives. Yeah, absolutely. I guess what I was looking at there is, first of all, how do you interpret the feedback from a score perspective? And then I suppose, what do you do with it?
Yeah.
And I suppose that would also link directly into development plans, not only for the business, but also for individuals. I do have another question that I've just thought of. So if an agency is going to start requesting this feedback, what method have you found to be the best? So I've seen people sending text messages with links. I've seen people sending emails, phone calls. What do you think is the best method?
Probably a mix is what I'd start with. So if you've got a text system set up as part of your process, texting them through is fine. I'd probably start with email, and I'd start with calls as well. So I'd start with email because it means that you can reach people rapidly en masse if you've got a few people that you want to communicate with. But remember that most surveys have about a 20% response rate if you send something out. So you might want to supplement that with then getting on the phone to people that haven't responded and making sure that they are kind of engaged in the process. So if you do get on the phone, go through the questions in a fairly structured way. Don't make up lots of extra questions, because you kind of want comparable data to do the analytics. But that was what I'd focus on. Some people are testing embedding the questions within an email, so you don't have to go off anywhere else. You just literally have your questions and you click it and it goes straight in and into the system. And so those mechanisms work well. But I think the human touch is still quite powerful, and particularly in such a digital world, like we are bombarded with a lot of digital comms, that differentiator of getting on the phone, or when you're seeing people, taking them out for a coffee, you can actually have the same conversations and really boost your response rates.
Okay.
So just one thing to add on that, sorry. If you do it face to face, one thing to remember is, if they're unhappy with you, they're not going to necessarily tell you. When you send an online survey, if they're unhappy with you, they might call that out specifically. So you can get that anonymity with an online survey that perhaps is difficult for some people to manage face to face.
Yeah, and I think that's really crucial, isn't it? Is making sure that you get the whole feedback instead of just going and getting that section because they're afraid to give it because it's about you or the group that you're with. Okay, just kind of finish that bit off. I think it's also really important about how often, because I've got certain providers who will remain nameless that I use personally, and I've recently just moved house, so I'm speaking to a lot of those providers to set things up. And let's say I've had 3 or 4 phone calls with the same provider, and I've had 3 or 4 texts to say, hey, how was the service? And by the time I've had the 4th one, I'm thinking, this is driving me mad that I'm getting all of these messages. Surely the first one was good enough. So how often should we be asking for feedback, Jenny?
So this is where automation has gone wrong, I would argue. And I think so a lot of businesses have invested in AI and tech and CRM systems and automation, and set up all these processes. And there is therefore a hammering of communication happening a lot of the time. And this is where I think it's not appropriate always to go that heavy and deep. So I think it's important to look at a few things. One is definitely do it in the moment or close to the moment when you want to get the feedback. So if it's that placement moment, do it close to when that person has started. Have a check to see, have they had a flood of other communications? So if you're sending them through email, you've got to check and see, have they had like a series of emails plus BD calls right before that, you're not going to get the same level of engagement. Do send it out a few times. So definitely try an email, a follow-up email. Then I'd move to a different channel of communication rather than get badgering on the email. But you've got to remember, people are out of office, they're in meetings, they're going on holiday, they're not necessarily going to respond to you within the week in your timescales. So give them time and give them the opportunity. But that's where you're picking up the phone becomes really important, because it's less intrusive sometimes, weirdly, than texts and emails being sent to you all the time. I don't know if you feel that when you've had those calls.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't like repetition, and I think it's got to be worthy. I mean, I obviously love to get feedback. So when I'm asked for feedback, I try and give feedback wherever I can, whether that's positive or negative. But to be asked repetitively in like 24 hours, I think, wow, something's clearly gone wrong here. However, having said that, it is important to be able to compare feedback, isn't it? So what would your thoughts be on measuring? So let's say we did a survey, or an agency did a survey today. They got the feedback, they took some action. When should they look to measure that again? And any advice about what that should look like?
Yeah, so I think this is where I was going to come onto the sort of second type of, I guess, feedback that you might have, which is perhaps we had transactional in the moment when you delivered a piece of service to them, whether that's placement, whether that's interview process. Relationship feedback or relationship surveys are taking it probably a slightly longer term scale. You'll hopefully have a slightly deeper relationship. Maybe you've had a few repeat placements with that client, and you want to find out how valuable and how loyal is that client going to be to you over time, because you want that. We talked about retention, right? We want to have those sticky relationships and retention. So with a relationship survey, you're going a bit deeper. You're probably going less frequently as a result. You're probably saying maybe once, maybe twice a year. I think you do it twice a year, but you don't do the transactional survey. So perhaps that's why. So I'd say at least once a year, you should be sitting down with your key clients and finding out why. Why do you add value? How much do they value you that they will stay with you for a longer period of time? What is it that makes you different from maybe some of the other competition? Are there any niggles that means that they aren't going to be loyal to you? And I think here I quite like using the NPS score, NPS, so Net Promoter Score, which probably some of you have heard of. And actually what I'll do on the chat is I'll send you an example of a company that's singing about their Net Promoter Score afterwards, because they've got a super high score because they've got obviously pretty good service. But with a Net Promoter Score, it's a very rigid formula. It's always on a scale of 1 to 10. The question is, how likely are you to recommend a peer or a colleague? And the way that they score it is they basically say that anyone that says they're 0 to 6, I'm just checking my number, 0 to 6 is a detractor. So a detractor means that they are probably not going to be wanting to work with you again. If you are a 7 or 8, you're what they call passive. And a lot of people think, well, passive, gosh, that sounds quite bad. 70%, surely. But actually, passive people are probably the people that are potentially going to steer to work with the competition. And actually, if you focus your efforts on anyone that's graded themselves as that, you're likely to uncover that they are not as loyal as you think. So you've got to work a bit harder to get that loyalty. And then only 9 and 10s are promoters. And those promoters are people that will sing about you. They're going to say, if their friend says, who do you use to recruit? I need to find a tech person. They're going to give you your name. They're going to be the people that give you the reviews and the case studies. And there are not many of them. And so to give you a sense of what the scoring is like in our industry, a Net Promoter Score is probably average 25 to 30%. That's the number, 25 to 30. It's out of 100. Good, like good is classified as 50, and exceptional, like smashing out the park, is 70. And there's very few recruiters that can talk to that. The one that I'll put in the chat is Hydrogen, and I think they have something like a 62. They've built an entire landing page on this to talk about it because they're so proud of it, and it's exceptional because the average is 22.
Wow. Okay, that kind of puts it into perspective, doesn't it, in terms of how we're monitoring that and grading ourselves. I've used the Net Promoter Score before in corporate business too, and it's very challenging to get such high scores. So I'm not surprised they're shouting it from the rooftops.
Yeah, and it's an uncomfortable stat to have internally. People don't like using it. They always go to the CSAT because you could say 90% of clients said they're satisfied with our service. It doesn't mean that they're loyal. That's the difference. What you're trying to figure out is how to, in a sea of recruiters, make sure that you've got some level of loyalty and a really strong relationship that someone's going to come back. So that's where you have to look at more than filling the jobs. What am I doing? What's that service delivery that really creates that relationship?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Okay, so I think that gives us a really good overview. And just to kind of add to that, you're absolutely right. We do use the relationship-based customer survey. And at Simplicity, we send out survey requests every 6 months. And that's an opportunity for us to gather feedback. And we found that really useful. We try and keep some of the questions similar. So that we can monitor progression and be able to see if the actions that we take off the back of our survey are working. So we're heavily, invested in customer feedback. On top of that, we also link it into our customer conversations. So every customer that we have, and we look after about 500 recruitment agencies, which is a huge amount. However, we ensure that we check in on those customers at least once every month. And then on a regular basis, whether that's quarterly or 6 monthly, depending on what our customers choose, we then have a very in-depth conversation with them to link some of their key challenges to the service that we provide. So we are constantly reviewing our service. And, that links back to the retention side of things that we spoke about, but it does also ensure that we differentiate ourselves in the marketplace, which is saturated.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add on that bit, Jenny, from a survey perspective?
No, I think just, let people know why it matters. Like sort of we're listening. We're not just asking. We are actually listening to you, and we're going to take action off the back of it, which we'll keep hammering on about because otherwise it's pointless doing the exercise. But I know that you created and you built loads of insights from your recent survey, didn't you? So what kind of themes and things were highlighted when you went through? You do it every 6 months. So what did you find? What were the insight pieces?
So we built a survey based on 10 questions to try and keep it short and sweet, but we wanted to focus on service, but also tech. So we wanted to understand what our customers thought about what we were providing and some of the key things. So from a service perspective, one of the key things that we uncovered was that some of our customers felt that we didn't check in on them enough. Because we're quite a self-sufficient process to some of our customers, and they use us when they need us and they don't when they don't. We assumed, which goes back to the question at the beginning, that our customers probably didn't want us to reach out and hound them. However, we were wrong. Our customers wanted to just check in on them, even if it's a 30-second conversation. So we've made some critical changes to the way in which we operate and are operating with them from a service perspective to ensure that we do reach out, even if everything's going very well and our customers are very happy. They want to hear from us. We've also added an extra layer to the service that we provide because our customers see us as a trusted advisor, a little bit like what you may have thought of from your bank manager. Quite a lot of people always looked up to the bank manager to ask for advice and guidance. So we've invested a lot of time to create a bit of a toolbox for our customer service team to utilize to be able to support and guide our recruitment agencies, because quite a lot of our customers were very good recruitment consultants. And overnight, have become business owners or entrepreneurs, and they haven't had any experience in running a business. So we are one of the first suppliers that they reach out to be able to get the upfront funding, back office support, debt collection, and so on. So because of that, we need to be able to be seen as the trusted advisor and guider to our recruitment agencies. So we've added that extra layer on because our customers felt they wanted that support from us. And then on a flip side, we've also put a lot of effort into gathering feedback around our tech. Because we've created our own tech platform that's been around for around 20 years, we're constantly enhancing the UX side, the user experience side of the system. Just because we feel that it does something doesn't mean it does it in the way our customers want it to work. So quite simple enhancements we've made to our system, which have made our customers' lives much easier. And I think I'm probably going to emphasize that saying, everything we do is around making our customers' lives much easier. And if we can do that, we create brand loyalty, and our customers want to work with us for a lot longer. Yeah. On that note, I'm not sure if it's the right time to share this, but I want to ensure that we share the progression that we've made. It's a great example of when taking customer feedback, acting on it, and then being consistent. It's no good acting on it once and then doing nothing else afterwards. It definitely makes changes. So here at Simplicity, we're actually quite proud to share this stat that 4 years ago, we lost 35 customers in a year. 35 customers went on to use the services of a different provider or take in-house their back office function. And for me, that wasn't good enough. Customers shouldn't feel that they're not getting what they quite need from us and want to move on. So I personally took on the challenge along with my customer team and the rest of the business, and we made a pledge that we were going to turn things around through requesting customer feedback and the desire and the goal to become the go-to provider of recruitment, finance and back office. And over the last 4 years, we have made lots of changes in-house from a service perspective, but also a tech development perspective. And I'm delighted to say that we've gone from losing 35 customers a year to the most recent year, we've only lost 3 customers. And out of those 3 customers, they've gone on to self-fund. So we've made a huge amount of progression and we've managed to retain our existing customer base, which has been absolutely fantastic. So I just wanted to share that stat because there's a lot of time and effort that goes into this activity, but it is definitely worth it because it will only hit your bottom line. And at the moment, I don't think anybody can sit there and say, you know, we're not worried about anything hitting our bottom line. Yeah. So I just wanted to share that.
I think the bottom line piece is just critical. Like, that's why you do it. Obviously, you do it to make sure the experience is differentiated and great and easy. But what that results in is loyalty and revenue and profit at the bottom. And, you know, think particularly about kind of temp business where you've got like reoccurring revenue, you want to make sure you're keeping that client relationship really strong. And so that is directly correlated to getting the feedback, acting on that feedback, and showing that commitment. So it doesn't need to be complex, but it just needs to be that regular, consistent piece that you mentioned.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you also phone people though, don't you?
Yeah, I wanted to link into the question from Mia. Mia's answered the question, and I think actually that was perfect timing, Jenny, because I do phone customers, and not just when customers give constructive feedback, but if a customer has taken the time to give us a decent amount of feedback, I do pick up the phone. And Mia, I pick up the phone almost immediately. As soon as that feedback hits my desk, I pick up the phone and I have a conversation with that customer. And I've done that several times. There was one time in particular where one of our customers, and this customer gave us the feedback that we weren't keeping in touch enough. So I picked up the phone immediately. And that customer is now probably one of our biggest advocates. They've joined us at several panel events. They've given great customer testimonials because not only did we act on it, we have consistently kept that momentum in place. And there's several other examples of that. So I think immediately is when you should act. And the first action should be that you follow up. And that, in my opinion, should be via phone, so that you can hear the customer's feedback, because sometimes it's not necessarily about what they say, it's how they say it. And you can understand if there's emotion within that feedback that you're being given. And that allows you a little bit of time to understand how quickly should you then react. And the reaction, I think, for me, is equally as important, because sometimes you might want to just check in, understand the feedback and listen. You might not need to react. You may not need to do anything. The customer might just want you to listen. But if there is constructive feedback and something that is actionable, I think the reaction should come later with an outlined step-by-step process as to how you're going to combat that.
I couldn't agree more, and I couldn't agree more. And I think if you've got a very long list of people that you've got to call, you've got to probably assess what is the feedback around, what's the value of that relationship that you hold. Are there any extenuating factors that makes you know it's going to be a rabbit hole that actually you don't want to go down? Is it clients over candidate? Kind of, you've got to make some of those judgment calls, right, as to who you start to go and talk to. But if people can be bothered to fill out a survey, which is, there's not many people that can be bothered. There's often 80% that don't do it. The 20% that do, you want to react to, and you want to kind of find out a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't. Okay, great. So I'm just conscious of time. We've got so much that we could talk about from a customer feedback perspective. But I just want to flip back over to some, really good advice from yourself, Jenny, whilst we've got the time. So we've spoken about how to capture feedback. We've spoken about the different types of survey. Are there any tools that you would recommend to our agencies that are listening today, or any other company for that fact? If there's companies on today that are not recruitment agencies, where can they go to get advice and guidance in terms of the tools they could use?
Yeah, okay. Well, I think I'd probably start by you need to select the tools dependent on the size, the scale of your business, and the budgets that you have and the time that you have. So often when you are in a startup mode, once you start to add on all of these extra tools and technologies that you need to buy to run your business, they start to elevate, right? You suddenly have all of these monthly costs going out. So if you are in that situation where you are at the start and you're trying to find some low or no cost options for you, they actually do exist. They exist to be able to send out communication. So you've got some free tools to email people. You've got, obviously, often within your Microsoft or Google, depending on what products you're using, you've got quite a lot of free tools available that you can use to do surveys and to analyze responses. But what you are making a choice on is how much time does it take you to do it, and how much branding and consistency does it have, and will it ultimately connect back into your CRM? So if you think about how do I do this cheap as chips, you can take a Microsoft form or a Google form and you can build your survey in that. You can also do the same thing in SurveyMonkey. There is a free SurveyMonkey license that you can have that has got limitations. It's got limitations on the volume of people that you can send it to and the amount of survey responses you get monthly. It has limitations on branding, i.e. there is no branding, it's their branding. And there's limitations on analytics. You can't export data to kind of number crunch and put it into ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever. So, but you can do it. So if you wanted to dip your toe in at a zero cost, you could combine those tools and let that do for you. And obviously with AI and Gemini and ChatGPT and Copilot, like, you've got analytics tools that you can take even just raw data, kind of comments boxes, and you can say, tell me what themes and patterns exist in the comments that are coming back, because I want to understand what's good and what's not good. So you can do that free. If you then go low cost, you've got a paid version of SurveyMonkey, which I'm sure you have, Vincent, right? You do SurveyMonkey. And that immediately enables you to have a much more sophisticated tool. So you can brand it, you can have a whole load of different ways of asking questions. You can do segmentation, so you can have an understanding of particular types of clients and what their responses are like. It will run analytics and reports for you that you can see on screen real time, and also you can export it out. There is ability to mail from there as well, so you could upload your contacts into that, but be a bit careful on kind of compliance around it and making sure you kind of remove them and things like that. So you can use tools like that. And then you can also, if you want to have a mailing system outside of just your sending it out on Outlook, if you want to go mass mailings, you could use anything like MailChimp and the equivalent products. They are all fairly low cost, like a 12 quid a month kind of style. So all in all, you could probably spend 30 pounds and you'd have a structured system in SurveyMonkey and a MailChimp. It would look beautiful, it would analyze for you, and you could switch it off when you don't want it. So because these are all generally monthly subscriptions that you can kind of opt into and opt out of. So I think that's the middle kind of option. And then for anyone that's got loads of money and they've got maybe more integrated CRM systems, like think about Bullhorn and Vincere, which I think a lot of your clients use, Vincent. They all have an automation product. So they all have Bullhorn automation or Vincere automation. And they have in them baked in kind of MPS style journeys or kind of email campaigns. And so you can actually then start to integrate it into your system. Larger organizations like to do this because it enables them to have everything in that client record, in that candidate record, and you can see exactly what's going on. It's all integrated. But obviously it comes at a price, and it's a fairly steep price to kind of have the automation element as well as the CRM tool. So those are there are some other quite cool tools out there. Jotform, Tally, I'll drop them in the chat later on, they're kind of equivalents of SurveyMonkey that look a little bit more sophisticated, quite a nice user experience, and look very fancy. But they all apply a similar process and a similar methodology. So yeah, there's quite a few options for you depending on where you want to start. You don't have to spend fortune.
Okay, so I think it comes down to budget, I suppose, and then
time.
From there, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we use SurveyMonkey, like you say, but I guess really it's about getting the questions right. One of the first surveys that we sent out, we didn't quite get the questions right, and we knew that because of the responses that we got. So we made the questioning a lot more straightforward, but also very specific about what we were actually asking, and then used a mixture of on a scale of 1 to 10, and then also verbatim feedback, and also how would you rate this. So it's quite nice to have a bit of a mixture. And I don't know about you, but when you're actually filling in a survey, it's quite nice to have different types of questions rather than the same, on a scale of 1 to 10. By the time you've got to question 9, you're like, I'm kind of done with this. So maybe mix it up a little bit.
And progress bars, they know I'm nearly there. I'm nearly completed. And also, I think be careful about how you combine. I've seen so many people put 2 questions in one. Can you tell me about this and this? Or what am I rating you on? You just asked me 2 very different things. So be careful about the structure of it, because you will not get useful information off the back. It won't give you the insight. Verbatim comments, people are often, they want it to be optional, so don't force them to say something, like give them the ability just to skip through. Those are kind of good things just to kind of tips to avoid, I guess.
Okay, great. Jenny, we could talk for hours about customer feedback, but we're actually running out of time. So I just wondered if there was some final hints, tips, guidance, actions you wanted to give our viewers today.
So I'd say if you're not doing feedback right now, start it, but start small. So pilot it, like your thing about we got the survey wrong the first time. If you just do a survey and ask 1 or 2 people to complete it, you'll soon get a sense of whether it works or not. So just start it with the most important thing first, whether for you that is, after a placement or after the interview, what was the experience like for clients and candidates? Just test it and just get one program up and running, and then really think about how you draw that information back into the business and get everyone feeling this is not a process, this is a way for us to learn, build it into the way that we operate, create that real kind of service customer centricity mindset that you need in the business to really stand out. So I think get people on board with you and just test it, just try something.
Okay, great. And I guess from my perspective, we have never been in such a saturation market at the moment. So recruitment is a fantastic place to be, but we need to get it right. And as agencies, I think you've got to be able to differentiate yourself from the competition. And the only way you're going to do that is, first of all, by retaining your customers. So make sure you don't have any leaks in your bucket, because it's very difficult to refill. And then, of course, that will support you with customer loyalty, customer feedback, and also customer reviews. I think at the moment, lots of customers, when they're assessing new suppliers, will look at reviews. It's never been so popular to go onto Google and have a look at Google reviews, Trustpilot, and there are other options for reviews as well. So it all adds to the growth of business and enables you to get better at what you do. And the only way you're going to do that is by gathering feedback. Jenny, you've been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today. For those of you who have listened to this webinar, or perhaps you're listening to this on, I was going to say catch up then, on replay, please do reach out to Jenny or myself. We're here to help. We want to be able to provide to you some of our experience to help you avoid any unnecessary pitfalls along the way. Jenny's details, I think you were going to pop them in the chat. Jenny, if you can pop them in the comments, your LinkedIn details. I'll also do the same as well. And yeah, please do reach out if we can be of any support and guidance. Hope you've enjoyed today, and best of luck with gathering that customer feedback. And remember, if you're going to ask for feedback, make sure that you put some time aside to do something about it. Thank you so much for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.